Okay, live on Facebook, in the group, in the right place. And I'll just check that's all streaming through. Brilliant, we're live now. So welcome everyone in Coach Community. If you're able to join us live, wonderful. If not, I hope you catch up on the replay on this later. And as posted earlier, I'm your host, Teresa Brooks, founder of this community. And with me, I have my friend, mentor and trainer, Master Trainer of NLP, Steve Payne, who a lot of you may know or certainly have seen his name around in this group. So welcome, Steve. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here.
Yeah, and the reason that we're coming to do this live today is because Steve has his NLP Mastery Program running again soon, I believe starting in November, isn't it, Steve? Yeah. And we just thought it'd be really good to come in and talk to you about the program, exactly what's in it, what it's all about. And of course, because that was the pathway that I took as well to NLP Trainer. And so that's why we're here today. We're just going to unpack a little bit about the program, what it's about, and talk about NLP really as a sort of what the point of it all is. And Steve is going to give you some rather juicy bits on neuroplasticity, maps of the world, and all kinds of things to see what the difference is between, if you're an NLP practitioner now, why would you want to elevate yourself to Master Practitioner? What's in that for you and for your clients, and also onto trainers training and how you can elevate your career and revenue with that. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Steve. If you want to just sort of like introduce a little bit about the program and really fundamentally what this whole NLP journey is all about.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. You just mentioned the NLP Mastery Program, which is something, of course, as you mentioned, that you took part in last year as well. A whole year of NLP, which kind of sound like, wow, that's a lot of NLP. But actually, it's dispersed across the weeks. It's spread across the weeks. And that's a really great way to learn it because you get drip fed in chunks your NLP. So you've got time to really absorb what you've been learning in 1 week. By the time you get to the next week, you've had time to think about that. You're not overwhelmed. So I think that's really, it's really unique. I don't think there's anywhere else at all that runs a program quite like that. And you ask a fundamental question there, you know, what is NLP really all about? And I'm quite a big picture thinker. I'm quite a big chunker. And to me, at the very simple level, NLP ultimately is about changing maps of the world. It's changing the way that we think. It's changing the way that we perceive things. It's changing the meaning that we give things, and ultimately how we behave as a result of those changes. So NLP, neuro, taking information in from the world around us, how we get that in through our neurology, linguistic, how we assign language to our experience to give it meaning, and then programming, which is our patterns of behavior based on the meaning we've given our experience. Ultimately, that's what it is. Yeah. And so at NLP Practitioner, you know, we're learning the nuts and bolts of what that really means. So we're taking the hood of the car, if you like, up, we're taking a look at the engine, and we're seeing how everything fits together. Once we know how everything fits together, we can then start tinkering and changing the performance, if you like, using the car metaphor, we can change the performance. And that's all NLP really is. So what we're looking to do is alter and change and have control, not control, I beg your pardon, I don't like that word, choice, exercise choice over if you like, the engine that drives us forward.
I've always found NLP right from the start to be a real empowerment tool. And it's different for everybody how they learn it, how they apply it, but it's something that's, you're not just learning it for clients and you're not just learning it to apply. It really is something that changes your life, changed my life. And what we were going to talk about a little bit today is that linguistics, that sort of the L of the NLP, because that for me is one of my favorite parts. And you just said then, you know, how you use language, how we use language, and we assign language to our experience. Now, that is the most, to me, one of the most fascinating parts of NLP. And certainly when that area is understood and mastered and used, of course, ethically to understand another person, it just changes the results. It changes the experience in a coaching session and also in your own life as well. So it'll be really good to talk about some of that linguistic part, because I'm not sure that, you know, obviously NLP practitioners will have touched on the models and gone into sort of Milton and meta models. But I found it to be a whole journey of learning about the language that I used and what I used to assign to what and what I made it mean. So can we talk a little bit about that? Are you happy to unpack some of that linguistics journey? Because in Master Practitioner, that really does go deep and is super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, practitioners will or should have had an experience of the meta model, which is the language of understanding, based on, primarily on Virginia Satir, the modeling of Virginia Satir. It's the ground language, so we understand exactly what people mean from their perspective, not our assumptions. So that's really powerful, and that requires listening, hearing what language they're using, and then asking questions to take away the ambiguity. To reveal the deletions, distortions, and generalizations. That's really what the meta model is. The second part of the meta model is it's an incredibly powerful belief change model, because the questions you ask in the meta model force people to reevaluate what they've just said, and sometimes that in itself produces a shift. So it's super, super powerful. The Milton model, of course, based primarily on the work of Milton Erickson, is about influencing the model of the world. So they go in opposite directions, but they both have the same aim, which is changing the map. So that's what practitioners will have covered, should have covered. In Master Practitioner, one of the benefits of Master Practitioner is, if you imagine when you start your NLP practitioner journey, you know nothing. You might have done a diploma, but essentially you know nothing. And then everything is new, everything is fresh, and you learn these incredibly powerful and, dare I say, cliche phrase, life-changing, because they are life-changing tools and techniques, and life-changing understanding of how you do what you do, why you do what you do. If you imagine that when you come to Master Practitioner, your starting point is all of that. That's where you're starting from. Then you can begin to get an idea of the kind of journey that you're going to be on for Master Practitioner. So a couple of main things that happen at Master Practitioner is, not only do you consolidate the NLP stuff you've already learned, you go deeper into that and you see it from a different perspective, because you're no longer learning it, you're now embedding it, which is a different process. We also then introduce other tools and techniques and more advanced language techniques. For example, Robert Dilts's sleight of mouth, which is verbal reframing, 16 different patterns to reframe beliefs. And this is all linguistic. As you said, the linguistic elements of this, for me, is by far the most powerful. Why? Because we get to use it on a daily basis. You don't need to set something up. You don't need a formal session. You don't need processes that people walk through. It's having a chat like we are right now. That you get to do every day of your life, hopefully every day of your life. Not only, of course, listening, if I'm listening to the language that you're using, getting a picture of your map of the world through what you're saying, the beliefs, the values that are being displayed in what you're saying, but also catch my own language. If I use that same process on what I'm saying or the words I'm using, it then becomes a lot more powerful to really produce change, not only in other people, but in yourself.
Yeah.
It's really super powerful. And really, for me, that's the most elegant form of NLP change work.
It is very elegant. It's far more in depth than I might have ever expected. And I'm smiling because sometimes I find myself catching absolutely everything, that I'm saying. I'm like, no. And it can be difficult sometimes. You start actually thinking about, what language am I using? So you start to become far more self-aware. And I think where it really powers up the coaching is being able to listen using all our senses, but certainly on the language specifically, what somebody might say that maybe someone who isn't trained in NLP would just sort of miss. It just kind of like blows away on the breeze, but it's actually really, really important. And I have found that when I have caught that language and explored that language, it has unearthed something which is then a game changer, and quite astounding to the client as well. And it's actually quite simple once you have really learned it. And like I say, it becomes a real elegance. By asking someone one simple question, and notice you use the word, what do you mean by and that you can see them go inwards and really explore that. And of course, another thing that we cover on Master Practitioner is, the deep use of metaphor, because lots of people will describe, we do it all the time. Oh, I just felt like, I don't know, I can't think of one right now, but, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. you know, trying to find my ideal client, whatever. And you think, oh, okay. So, and it's just really unpacking all of that. It's with such a simple conversation, like you say, it's not complex. And that's what I really love about it. It's just really deepened the results that I can get. And sometimes people will sit there a little bit like, you see it happening. And I can't believe I said that. I don't know what I meant by that. And so you've got this whole coaching piece that comes out of it, rather than just that surface structure, perhaps. And I don't say that with any criticism, but just sometimes that surface structure that certainly I only was operating on prior to that. And I missed lots and lots of things about what people were actually saying to me. And that's before you even bring in any of the physiology. So for me, it's really about, you know, connection, which is one of my highest values, as you know, and being able to connect with my clients. And certainly Master Practitioner took that to another level within myself and for them. And so I'm always endlessly fascinated by sleight of mouth. And I don't know whether you're tempted to share a little bit more of that for anyone that's curious as well.
For sure. I mean, when we respond to metaphor, just to pick up on the metaphor point, we use metaphor, roughly speaking, once every 19 words. We'll find that our language is littered with metaphor. I've just used littered with metaphor. You know, if you work with people's metaphors, you also, because metaphors are direct parallels to what somebody is experiencing. So if somebody says, you know, I faced a mountain, it's a mountain of work, or it was a mountain to climb. And you say, what kind of mountain? And when they start to unpack the kind of mountain, you're actually getting closer to what's going on for that person. Yeah. If you say littered, what kind of litter? What does that look like? You know, littered with mistakes. What do you mean by littered? What does that look like? What kind of litter is that? You know, if people, I'm just, if you've seen my TED talk, dropping the TED talk in there, but if you see my TED talk, I talk about the principles of flight, you know, the principles of flight. And one of the things I ask within the principles of flight is when, you know, what type of aeroplane are you? Because there's lots of different types. Are you a 747? Are you a fighter jet? Are you a cargo plane? Are you, you know, those, again, they're all just metaphors, but they tell you an awful lot about the person. So metaphors help us unpack. They are like windows, again, into somebody's mind and the way they perceive something. But you mentioned sleight of mouth. Like, sleight of mouth is...
Can I just comment on the metaphor thing as well? Just to add to that, because it's fascinating, isn't it? You said, did you say every 19 words?
Yes.
Yes. And that will get people thinking as well, what am I saying every 19 words? But also, metaphor is so powerful, but also so gentle. So, you know, I found as well that it's easier to talk in metaphor sometimes, and then we get into a deeper level, like what we may do in parts, and using metaphor for kind of like, you know, some of the healing elements of NLP, some of the alignment pieces, where we don't need that particular story. We maybe don't need all the details of the litter, but it can start to represent what's going on for somebody. And I think that is a beautiful part of NLP as well, which is not to be missed, because one of the main things that I've always understood is that, you know, yes, you can work with content sometimes, but you don't need the content. So when it comes to the more challenging aspects of someone's life, or something like I've mentioned, some of the deeper parts, we don't need all of that content. So there's many things that can be changed, healed, empowered without a lot of detail. And I think that's a really important part of NLP, because a lot of people, come on, we've all done it, get really caught up in the story and the details and the happening of, and can't get out of it. And so I think NLP is a great tool for like freedom and releasing ourselves from all kinds of things as well. So yeah, it's juicy. Let's talk about the sleight mouth patterns, because this is a fun one.
Absolutely. And again, sorry, this is the thing, you start talking about something, we understand metaphor more deeply than we do the literal. Yes. So, you know, the reason why we use metaphors once every 19 words on average is because they convey the meaning more powerfully than the literal. So that's one thing. And the other thing is,
because of the unconscious,
because a metaphor it brings so much stuff beyond the literal. It's much bigger than the literal. Yeah. So our understanding is deeper. You know, if you talk about, politicians talk about the Calais jungle, by calling it the jungle. They're now deliberately using metaphor to convey a feeling about the thing that they're talking about. So when you say Calais jungle and people start thinking about, wild animals and so on, that's incredibly powerful language. If they talked about the negative aspects of certain individuals, that would be too literal, it's just
too
horrible.
specific.
But you think Calais jungle, you don't need to say any of that. It's already implicit in that metaphor. So it's much more powerful. It's much bigger than the literal. So metaphor is super powerful. We either use it naturally in our language, or we can deliberately choose metaphors that bring bigger meaning, both positive and negative. Coming on to sleight of mouth, and again, what we're doing is we're impacting model maps of the world with that. Coming on to sleight of mouth. Sleight of mouth is an example of linguistic reframing. It's something that we cover on Master Practitioner, and it's from Robert Dilts. And sleight of mouth comes from sleight of hand, magician sleight of hand. It's sort of misdirecting. And what it is, it's changing perspectives, ultimately, so that people view their belief differently. And as you know, on the program, the way that I teach sleight of mouth, I think is quite different. It's a bit mad. And
it's a bit mad. Get ready.
Probably carry me away. But what I'm using is NLP to teach it. So I'm setting visual anchors, I'm setting vocal anchors, and I'm setting associative anchors for each of the patterns as I'm teaching it. And I think it's important that we use NLP to teach NLP as well, and we use NLP to teach other things. But with sleight of mouth, what we have is, just to explain what that model is, it's a reframing model where there are 16 different ways to change a belief, a limiting belief that somebody has given you. And so Robert Dilts uses iconography in order for us to learn the patterns. And there are 16 different patterns, as I mentioned. And so we have a way of teaching that so that everybody learns those patterns in 10 minutes.
It's a fun way as well. It's I have to interject there that I'm just, in my mind, I'm running through. Yeah, I still know that now. And I said to Steve before the live, don't make me do it. I'm not doing it, because it's we all got up, we used our bodies to learn it. It was fun, it was vocal, and that was the way to just anchor it in. And it's so much easier than just learning something or 16 things on a piece of paper. So one thing I would say about the whole year of mastery program is that we had fun, right? I mean, some of this stuff it seems quite intense to talk about, and it seems quite deep, and all of that. There's a lot to learn. Yes. But we did have a lot of fun, and great moments, and lots of connectivity, and that really embeds the learning as well. So it wasn't just 52 weeks of like uni level learning. It was really engaging, and Steve's a good fun trainer. Do you know what I mean? It really was great. But maybe you can show us the iconography, which is just basically the pictures of the patterns, which this will just sort of pique your curiosity, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just take a look, and let's see if this is working. Now, I'm not sure if you're able to switch spotlights to this.
Got a clever little setup for you all, guys, which if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll just pretend we didn't try it.
We'll go back to plan B.
Yeah. So
I need to turn on the camera, don't I?
Turn it on.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Let me just spotlight that.
Good. So if you can see that.
And you should be able to.
Okay, great. So
two little boxes.
Two little boxes. So what Robert Dilts talks about in Sleight of Mouth is that we're looking for the normalized belief system, basically. So a full belief will be made up of both a cause effect, A causes B, and a complex equivalence, which is A is the same as B. So what we get is something like, for example, using the belief, if it's raining, then it's wet, which means I can't go out, for example. So if we use that as the belief, just to give the example. So on this side here, you've got the cause effect, raining, therefore it's wet. So if it's raining, then it's wet. And then the complex equivalence, which is the meaning, which means I can't go out. So often people will say, I can't go out. They just give you the ends of a belief. But if you were going to look for belief change, what you want is the whole string of the belief, because you've got more, if you like, to work on in order to change the belief. So you would say, okay, so you can't go out. Why is that? You look for them to explain the full belief. If it's raining, well, it's raining, which means it's wet, so I can't go out. Now you've got the full belief. Now you can work on it. And in sleight of mouth, there are 16 different patterns. So for example, you've got a pattern here, which is called the hierarchy of importance. I'll come to all of these in a moment. Then you've got consequence. Then you've got another outcome. Then you've got metaphor, which is basically a story. Then you've got chunking down. Then you've got chunking up. Then you've got one counterexample. Then you've got redefine. I'll explain all of these in a moment. Then you've got intention. Then you've got apply to self. And there's two of those on different parts of the belief. You've got a reframe in the middle. Then you've got maps of the world. And then you've got reality. And the final thing you've got right across the top is meta, the meta position, if you like, the meta frame. So there's 16 patterns here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So those are the patterns. What do they mean? So what we do on the program, as you know, T, is we'll teach people that in 10 minutes, and then we'll give them a competition, and people can draw that and label it within 60 seconds, which is extraordinary. But using NLP to teach NLP, they learn those patterns in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm just smiling because it's like taking me right back. Like this is anchored into my whole system. I'm like back on the course. I'm smiling because I remember all the activities around it. And when the first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, what is that?
It is
and how it all
nuts.
actually becomes elegant and simple when you understand what each part of that is. And that's just the beauty of the linguistics of it. Love it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, so very briefly, I'll just talk around those so people can understand what the pattern means, just going on another level. So if we're working on that belief, if it's raining, then it's wet, which means I can't go out, for example. So if somebody gave you that, and that was a limiting belief, it was holding them back, and you wanted to work on that using this process, then we work our way around these patterns. These are all different options that we can use. We can use one of them, or we can combine them. So starting, for example, here, this is a picture of what looks like a tablet. And basically it's a tablet because it's the hierarchy of importance, almost like Moses coming down the hill with his tablets. So the hierarchy of importance. So on a belief like, if it's raining, then it's wet, which means I can't go out. You know, we might say something, what's more important, that you go and see your friends, for example, or you lock yourself away in the house? Or isn't it more important to ... So we're using the hierarchy of importance as the belief change mechanism for this first pattern. Moving on, consequence. So consequence is another pattern. So you say, okay, so if you don't go out every time it rains and you happen to live in England, for example, then the consequence of that might be that you never go out, or you go out maybe 10% of your life. So again, we're working using consequence as the belief change method. And all we're looking to do is get somebody to change the perspective that they have on the belief that they're holding. So there's hierarchy of importance, consequence, and then another outcome. And with another outcome, what we're doing is we're shifting the outcome to something else. So actually, this isn't about, going out. This is about you staying in touch with your friends. This is this is about you being part of the group or whatever it might be. So we shift the outcome to something different with another outcome. Next is metaphor, and metaphor is simply a story. So we might say, well, there was a person who lived in the UK. In fact, they lived in the north of Scotland, and it rains a lot in the north of Scotland. And people just thought this person had disappeared many, many years before because it rained a lot. It never went. And you're using a story, and the message is in the story, like all good stories. So you're using a story as the belief change mechanism. So metaphor. Then we've got chunking down, which is the down arrow. And chunking down simply means that you're getting very specific. Okay, so it's raining. So how exactly does that work? So rain stops the door from working. Rain prevents you from walking. How exactly does the fact that it's raining stop you going out? So you're chunking down and getting very specific. Then you're chunking up, which is also known as blow up, which is exaggeration. So, okay, so again, so it's raining, is it? So that means if you step outside into the rain, of course, you're just going to melt, just like the Wizard of Oz. I'm melting, or something ridiculous and exaggerated. Like, okay, so you're going to only go out 10% of your life, or you're just making it sound ridiculous and blowing up. Now, obviously, you need a lot of rapport with that one, as you do with a couple of these. But nevertheless, you're just blowing something up. You're exaggerating. Oh, yes, it's raining, of course. So you're going to just disappear in a puff of smoke if you step outside the door, etc., etc. Yeah, be careful with that one. Next one is a counter.
Just before you move on, Steve, just to say that a lot of these, as people start to learn them and go through them, realize this is what we use all the time. This is how we're speaking, you know, if one of our friends says something. And so there's nothing sort of, you know, magical about it, but it's breaking it down and understanding it so then we can use it with you know, positive intention to make these changes. But all of these things, anyone listening think, oh yeah, I've done that before, I've said that, you know, it's all starting to drop in, that this is how we use our language. So, and it's really the study of that and bringing it to be more powerful. I mean, maybe you shouldn't teach the whole thing, because then they might not come on the program.
well, I mean, all of these are much deeper than this.
Oh gosh, yes, they are.
And exactly as you said, you know, every one of these, Dilts didn't create these; he's modelled them from people.
Yes.
He noticed, for example, Richard Bandler very rarely lost an argument. So he started to pay attention to what Bandler was doing. And he went back into literature and found examples of all of these and into history. And so that's what it's been modeled from. Just very quickly, you know, counterexample. So have you ever been out and you've had a good time, or have you ever been out in the rain and it was okay? So a counterexample, again, shifts the belief. You've got redefines, where you're redefining a word. So it's raining. Raining becomes, yes, you're right, it's fresh. So we redefine a word. You've got intention. I know your intention is to stay dry. However, and then you start linking that with the consequence of that is, but isn't it more important, etc. Apply to self very quickly. So again, just using that as a belief change mechanism. If it's raining, you take the word raining and apply it back on itself, which is what that means. So what opportunities could be raining down on you if you did step outside, for example, and you're using a word back on itself? Map of the world is, there are those that say you just quote other people or quote statistics or whatever, other people's map of the world. Reality, again, tell me exactly what is, how it works that rain prevents you from going out. And then metaframe, this metaframe across the top, is shifting it beyond what actually is being said into something bigger. For example, this isn't about you going out, this is about you being in control of your own life. So again, once you get used to these patterns, it gives you tremendous access for belief change. And what we're looking to do with belief change is loosen a limiting belief so that there's opportunities then and possibilities that there is another possibility which is the beginning of belief change. So that's just an idea of one of the models that we'll cover at Advanced Linguistics. When we go into that,
it's a whistle stop tour, that whistle stop, because like you say, each one of those has such depth to learn as well. And one of you mentioned rapport, which of course is a huge part of NLP. And when you've got rapport with somebody that's you know, well-intentioned and solid, you can pretty much ask or say anything, even if you go wrong. You know, sometimes you need to go wrong to go right, and the rapport can remain. But it's the top one that I like there that you mentioned, that metaframe. You know, this isn't about this is about that. And at that point in a coaching conversation, for instance, you can really get into the depths of, like, when you've actually noticed what someone's presenting, it's not actually about this, it's about that. That can be a huge piece. And I remember us working on that and talking about the rapport required to use that pattern and at what point. And so all of this comes into the training of, like, it's not just about flinging these out at certain points. It's like, how do you elegantly coach and work with somebody using these patterns? And that's really quite stunning work.
Absolutely. If you use any of these patterns without rapport, you'll get resistance within one or two patterns. That's it.
Yeah.
And if you think what can be really fun with this is you start linking them together. So, for example, I know your intention is to stay dry. However, isn't it more important to actually be connected to people? Because the consequences of not being connected to people is the fact that you'll lose friends. And actually, let me tell you about somebody now on metaphor where that happened to. And actually, you know, what's really exactly happening to stop you going out? But actually, isn't this really about the fact that you're not exercising control of your own life, and you stop linking them together? And you can have a 30-second piece of, you can really shift a belief or destroy somebody. So you've got to be knowing what you're doing, of course.
Absolutely.
It's really super powerful. And again, used with skill, it's brilliant. Brilliant. Excuse me, brilliant.
Skill and, you know, following the intention, of course, of the client, which is always really, really huge. And one of the big pieces that I just want to stress at this point is that this program, all the training, I've done my entire NLP pathway with you, of course, pretty much. And it's really one thing that has been very important. I talk about it a lot, is the ecology of it all. You know, when to use it, how to use it, the ethics of using it, and always following the intention of the client. And I think that's really important with all of this, because having this kind of skill, Steve, really does put us in a position of, well, it puts us in a different position with the client, doesn't it? Because we know so much, and we're using those skills with good intention. We're using those skills to actually help that person. And so I think that's really important. I've always valued the ecology teachings around all of this that you've given to a high level, and talk about it a lot. So just want to add that in there as well, because, you know, some people have a little bit of query around sleight of mouth and linguistic patterns, and they don't know what it's all about, really. So it's just to truly reframe that, because I found it to be nothing less than a fantastic tool to help clients.
Everything is about how you use it and your intention behind using it. And just very briefly, Virginia Satir, who the meta model was created from observing primarily Virginia Satir. She was all about understanding people's maps, whereas Milton Erickson was all about influencing them. And as Drinda tells the story, for many years, Virginia Satir thought Milton Erickson was the devil, because rather than understanding, he was influencing. When she got to meet him, she realized what a deeply compassionate human being he was. And in fact, they were both headed to the same place using different methods, but he was a deeply compassionate and skillful and ethical person. And so when we use things with ethics and integrity, and with the intention, which is the common positive intention of helping the client get where they want to get to, then it's all perfectly fine. It's when we're stepping outside of those boundaries that tools like this can be used in a way which is not a win-win. And that's
absolutely. Absolutely. And just for anyone who isn't aware, Virginia Satir, interesting, was a world-renowned family therapist, wasn't she? So, you know, a lot of the NLP roots are in therapy models. And of course, Milton Erickson and his hypnotherapy. And it's really interesting how you talk about those two worlds finally kind of understanding each other. That's a really perfect example, is it not, of NLP to start with anyway? The assumptions that is evil, you know, is just trying to influence them. But when you actually get together and you actually have a communication, a connection, that dissolves, and you're actually seeing another perspective. And so it's really, it's wonderful. I mean, I love NLP, as you know, and that's just one pocket of it, isn't it, really? And you've said it's all about changing the maps of the world, because people want to change their maps of the world. You know, if you're happy with your map of the world, don't need to do anything, stay as you are. But if it's causing a problem, and things are not as you wish, or stuck in those cycles and loops, then NLP is a fantastic way to sort of, you know, release yourself and clients from that, which kind of leads to just touch on the point of like neuroplasticity, because you were going to talk a little bit about that, and then I was going to just share a couple of points of my experience of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability, or our ability, to rewire the brain, and exercise choice over those neural networks and neural pathways. And effectively, that's what we're doing with NLP. The moment that you help somebody see something from a different perspective, you step into the sort of Wayne Dyer quotes of change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. What we do is we start to see things differently. And so neuroplasticity is our ability to change the if you like, the pathways in the brain. How we do that, talking about linguistics, the moment, you know, if I ask you a question and I ask you to look at something from somebody else's perspective or from a different perspective, and you start doing that and you begin to see different things, then different things are firing in your brain. If I ask you questions and you're thinking about that, you are sending electrical impulses between neurons. And what happens inside the brain, which is really fascinating, is you've got two neurons, for example, and linking them, which is where how the electrical impulses transmit. Linking those two neurons is something called an axon. And what happens is the electronic impulse goes along, or the electric impulse goes along the axon to the other neuron, and it's received at the neurons. What happens is, if you think that thought again and again, the brain goes, hang on a second, there's stuff happening between these two neurons. This could be important. Let me see if I can help. And what it does is it coats the axon with a white fatty material called myelin. And myelin makes the electric impulses travel even faster. And so again, it's speeding up the process of this new thought, and it's embedding this new thought. In between the myelin, there are little gaps along the axon, and those little gaps are called nodes of Ranvier. And what they do is they act as little short circuits. So now that the myelin's there, the electricity is going faster. Then there's little nodes of Ranvier, there's little gaps and short circuits where the electricity goes even faster. And what happens is it speeds up the transmission, and we're embedding these new thoughts. They're taking hold. And myelin increases the transmission of those electric impulses by 50 to 100 times. So we really are now influencing the wiring of our brains by asking those questions, by thinking about those things and continuing to think about them. They can actually photograph thoughts forming now. I say they, neuroscientists. And it looks like this funny little tentacle thing, and it sends out a tentacle. If it connects with something, it holds and then strengthens. If it doesn't, it withers back inside and disappears.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
It's fascinating.
It's absolutely insane to think that is going on in your brain. It's powerful, but also you think about when there's negative beliefs and beliefs that have been formed and rooted, that's been going on for a long time. That's all been happening in there. So when NLP comes in, it's not going to happen instantly, is it? It's like, or does it happen instantly? Can it happen instantly? Because we've all had those moments, but again,
it's really interesting because positive psychology tells us that we need about 5 positive thoughts to overcome a negative, because we're hardwired for negative thinking. And that's because it's safe. It keeps us alive. Again, if you watch the TED Talk, and please do watch the TED Talk, this is mentioned.
I've already watched it, Steve. I watched it, and we can put it in here as well because it's really interesting. But yes, it is. It's just, we're meant to just function and stay alive, aren't we? So that's the design. So
again, we have to really work on those negative thoughts or beliefs. They're there for a good reason, but usually the reasons, of course, are historical. We don't really face the same kind of threat. But nevertheless, that's in our hardwired sort of being, and therefore we need to overcome that. And that's our job, is to overcome those thoughts, those negative thoughts, or shift thoughts to thoughts which are more empowering, that make a difference to our behavior. Yeah, that's absolutely.
And one of the things, as you remember, my presentation was on submodality belief change, my trainer's training. And one of the things that, of course, we're doing is always remembering, we can't just like map across, oh, I believe this, we'll just believe that. Instead, it doesn't work. And this is why people sometimes get a bit flummoxed with belief change, because they're like, oh, it doesn't work. You know, I can't just, this is how I'm thinking, this is what I believe, and this is core inside of me. And we're just popping over an opposite affirmation or a belief. It falls flat. And it's because of all of this. And so it's about, how do you create the room, the space for that to be able to happen, you know, to kind of loosen that belief. And in a session just last week with a client, oh, Steve, you'd have been proud of me. It was so good. It was so good. She was, without breaking any confidence, she was talking about one woman who was a wife and a perception that this person had about being a wife, and then referring to another person in the family that was deemed more successful, that she sort of like, you know, really looked up to. And so the question I asked was like, is this woman married? And she was like, yes. I said, okay, so she's also a wife. Ooh, it all just suddenly shook the belief around what it was to be a wife. And she just sat there looking at me. She said, I can't believe you just did that. Because she was realizing that both women had the same, they were both wives, and there was something else going on there as well. But it was absolutely fascinating. So as that was loosened, and that space there sort of taken out at the knees, then able to actually shift and reframe that beautifully. And still at the end of the session, the client was sat there staring a bit, saying, I just can't believe that. I'm sorry, I'm still back there with that bit. Nice. And it just kind of came, it just flowed. And so it's listening to what's actually being said and picking out that question.
That's a great practical use of sleight of mouth, because that's the one counter example, which, as you say, flummoxed her there and stopped her in her tracks.
Yeah. And so, and it just allowed space for a different kind of thinking, but it also just, you know, if we have a belief and it's rooted in, we don't even want to believe what belief sometimes. Come on, like, we're all human. We know what that's like. But people do talk about, you know, affirmations not working, belief change not working. And when you've explained that neuroplasticity and that hard wiring, okay, yeah, it can be tough. It can be really tough. And not everything works on everything. Okay, it's not just this magic fix for all. But when you have got all of these kinds of tools, you've got the skills, and you've also got the calibration skills, the rapport skills, where you're absorbing that client in their whole entirety, then you're able to almost, you know, not just chuck it all at someone, but think it just comes, what you can use. This is about a huge skill, a toolbox, isn't it? That is then used in a really elegant, bespoke way for the person in front of you.
And here we go to, you know, what we do at Master Practitioner is, again, every level of NLP training raises your perspective of what you're doing, and you see different things. Your vision gets wider, and you see how everything fits together. What we're doing as a coach, we're not trying to win battles. We are planting seeds. You know, we're asking questions and we're planting seeds, and those seeds are going to germinate. And so it's not about a switch, as you say. It is about a process. And the key thing with conversational belief change, which is linguistic belief change, is you ask a question to your client, and the client can't make the pieces fit to hold their belief together. And so what happens is they begin to doubt their own belief, because inside, it doesn't matter what they say to you, it's irrelevant what they say to you, but inside they can't make the pieces fit. If the moment that doubt is created, you cannot have doubts without, at exactly the same time, creating space for new possibilities. You can't have one without the other. They come together. So as long as you ask great questions, and then the client is introducing doubt on their own belief, there will be space for new possibilities, and new possibilities can lead to another, a change in belief. And that's, as you say, that's the process where we're loosening beliefs. We're not telling somebody what to believe.
No. And again, it just, you know, straight into my mind again, just comes that rapport, because, you know, people can say that they want to change a belief, but also hold on to it really tightly. So any of that sort of like that challenge and change work has to be done in the best, safest space, and to allow somebody to have that moment where, oh, you kind of see it dismantling a little, and you need to let them just have that moment, because sometimes it could get a bit tricky if they then want to defend that. You know, lots goes on in the psyche of a person, how they present. So everything, and like you touched on it, and it's just so true, making sense of it all through Master Practitioner, making sense still of NLP Practitioner. And let's be honest, NLP Practitioner it's a big amount of information into the mind and body when it's new. And so I had 2 years between NLP Practitioner, pretty much best part of, before I did Master, because, well, I thought, well, I really want to use these tools, understand these tools, which ones I prefer, you know, etc., to really start to understand what I'd learned first of all, before progressing to actually master that. And so for me, it was wonderful to do it over the year, because actually, I don't know, 16 days of Master Practitioner, like the intensive training, that's quite a big ask this day and age. I think that's quite a big ask for people. And I don't know how many of you guys that might consider this have got 16 days straight to dedicate to this. But I think the way that we live these days, it's not really that easy to do that. So to be able to break it down like this and allow the settling in, and of course we had a portal as well, which was amazing. We love the portal, everything is in there. And so being able to go back still now and look at that in those smaller chunks. I mean, we talk about chunking as a process. This whole program is a chunked down process. So it's great, and I enjoyed doing it that way. I really did. I think, and the intensive way for me personally, although it's immersive, and I totally understand that, this was more about, it was of relationships as well, you know, the group, the relationships, the support, and the practice, the time we had to actually work together in between, which we did a lot. So, you know, that was really worthwhile as well. It's not just one element. It's not just the model of how you're going to be teaching the content. It's really so much more. You know, it was incredible. Even the modeling project.
Yeah, the modeling project. Yeah.
Modeling, because obviously modeling is a huge part of NLP as well. I've got just to terrify everybody. This is the Master Practitioner book, and I've just got the modeling jumped out at me. And of course, talk a little bit about modeling, Steve. Like all of NLP is also modeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that's how we learn. We learn from others. Everything is about modeling. So NLP, if it's anything, is modeling. So modeling is finding something or something that somebody does. You can model companies, you can model processes, but also when you're modeling people, you're finding a skill, usually a skill that you would like to have yourself. And what you're doing is understanding what exactly is creating that skill in another person. So you're extricating, if you like, or extricating the actual skill. John Grinder would call it taking the tacit knowledge. You're observing, and they followed Milton Erickson for 9 months when they were modeling him. They were shadowing him for 9 months. So they were absorbing what he did. And then they were, through repetition, repeating it in exactly the same way that he did. So modeling involves really doing what the model does. John Grinder has a 5-step process, which is the process that we use on the course as well, which involves unconscious assimilation, where you simply do, and you keep doing. The unconscious assimilation enables your body to begin to tell you why you're doing it. Not the other way around. It's not your intellect telling you why. It's your body telling you why. Through the repetition, you begin to learn through the experience of doing, which is incredibly powerful. And then it's once you are able to do whatever the model is doing, is then you code it so that you can take that code and give it to somebody else, somebody who doesn't have access to the model, and they can take that code, and from the code, they can get the same or similar results. That's a successful modeling project. And it's the heart of NLP. And so we do a modeling project at Master Practitioner, which is extraordinary because everyone goes off and chooses their own models. They come back and then they demonstrate that to us.
Oh, it's the most extraordinary experience I have ever had. And anyone that joins this program will have the joy of experiencing that. But it is such a push out of the comfort zone. It's such a deep, deep learning. And I think what's missed sometimes is how much physiology is involved in NLP as well. People think about the neuro and the linguistic and then sort of the programming, and they're actually, the physiology and the unconscious work is huge. And the modeling, and some people have had resistance to this, thinking, it's copying. And it's very important to understand this is just about replicating success, again, with positive intention. But, when I did my modeling project, my subject, I was really starting to feel the values, the beliefs, what was coming through. And so that unconscious assimilation, that kind of process is very different to I could do a modeling project on how to journal, or how to create the perfect podcast or whatever it might be. And you could model those kinds of processes, their skills. At the end of the day, it's always going to be you bringing in you as well into your world and how you're using things and your intention for using things. But that's how the world is built, on the codes for repeatable success. How did they do it? Successful companies, look at other successful companies. What are they doing? How do they do it? What are they using? Sometimes they may repeat those codes and not get it right. It's just like, I don't understand. I've done exactly the same thing and I've not got the results. You kind of go again and you look at that. So the modeling process is just so powerful for the tiniest of things up to something much more.
On one level,
scalable.
modeling is, on one level, modeling is copying, but it's copying until you become, and that's different from copying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not plagiarism. It's not plagiarism code. No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not that, people. So, there's Master Practitioner.
The difference is becoming rather than copying.
Yes.
And that's the unconscious assimilation. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a very big difference in skills that you might want to draw for leadership or public speaking. And in doing that modeling project as well, wow, you're going to just bust a lot of those fears out anyway, to be honest. They're just going to get blown out of the water. And once you've done that in the way that we do it, it really is a big growth piece as well, which I think is important to mention, that in Master Practitioner, again, you're not just on the outside looking in learning stuff like you're at college. you're embodying it, and that's why it's life-changing all round.
I would also say that, NLP is about behavioral flexibility. And in order to be truly behaviorally flexible, you have to, exactly. It's not easy for you to say. You have to let go. You have to not be worried about how you look all the time, all that, because that's, again, belief stuff that holds you back. It's truly to step into a space, to truly be free to step into a space, which is part of the journey. And that allows you to be fully behaviorally flexible. And that's where real change comes, because you can't intellectualize that kind of change. You have to be it. You have to feel it. You have to give yourself to it. And that's part of the process.
It's a powerful one as well. So, I mean, there's so much more around this journey. But of course, that's the first part of the program, isn't it? For the first, was it 6 months?
6 months.
January to June, Master Practitioner. And then, of course, moving on the mastery year carries on into Trainer's Training. And I know that you're going to be running an information evening for anyone that is like seriously interested in joining this program. We'll tell you about that in a minute. But Trainer's Training, of course, then is the next, just about the same, isn't it? Again, amount of time that takes you even further on the pathway. And that is a whole other learning as well, of like how to train the topics. And Trainer's Training for NLP is also applicable to anything. So it's a training module. So whatever people are doing with NLP or in the future, this is a wonderful training program. So just talk a little bit, if you wanted to, about Trainer's Training pathway, and then perhaps tell people when the evening is, so they can come along and find out more about the content, the pathways, the investment, how they get involved and secure themselves a place on the program.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Just looking at the comments from people who went through the program last year. One of the comments was, I didn't feel I knew NLP until I did Trainer's Training. And there's a thing about training, or training to be a trainer. When you're learning NLP to train it, if you're learning anything to be able to teach somebody else it, you learn in a far more effective way than if you're simply learning, if the learning is going to stop at you. Does that make sense? If you're learning it with the intention of teaching it to somebody else, it's super, super powerful. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the higher you go up the NLP learning, the bigger the perspective you have, and you understand it at a completely different level. So again, as a trainer, there's another meta layer, if you like, of understanding of NLP that you step into. So it encompasses public speaking training or presenting training, because you're going to be doing that. And also a real understanding of how to structure the learning, so that when you are teaching that to other people, you're chunking it again, because we're using everything that we've learned on the whole journey. You're chunking it in a way that other people can absorb. Because the key thing with NLP Trainer's Training, as it is with any trainer's training, is the two questions. It's, did they get it? Can they do it?
Can they do it? Yeah.
Those are our two parameters. Did they get it? Can they do it? And so, we teach you how to do that. And as part of the entire experience, starting at Master Practitioner, going through to Trainer's Training, we have guest experts that we bring in as well. So it's not just myself.
That was so good. That was so good. Yeah.
Amazing people. We have the world's leading experts in their field. We have Shelley Rose Charvet, of course, the world's leading expert on language and behavior profiling, which is, of course, meta programs. Simply brilliant. Robbie Steinhaus runs the NLP School, is on faculty member of the NLP University, California, with Robert Dilts. We had Jeremy Lazarus, who came in, and well, I'll tell you on the evening what all of these people did with us. Jeremy Lazarus, a master trainer. We had John Thompson, master trainer. And we had about 5 or 6 master trainers, again, coming in to work with everybody on the program. It is, an extraordinary journey. It's a totally unique NLP journey. It's a totally unique NLP experience.
Yeah,
I mean,
we were all very upset
nowhere else
when it ended, as you know. It's like, we couldn't believe it. But there's the point, I'll be honest, in the program where you're like, this needs to end now. Like, you're doing the exams, there's lots of learning, etc. And I think we all got to the frazzle point, it's just how it is. However, that's
a great sign, by the way. If you didn't get to that point, there'd be something wrong.
Yeah. And, it's pretty intense. And I remember doing my exams and being really ill. Do you remember? I was really poorly. I couldn't believe it. But when it came to the end, We were all very upset and did really want to press leave for the last time on our Zooms. And we did continue as well, some great connections, an NLP group, and wonderful friendships as well. So it really became something that was being embodied, I think, and everybody went through something on that program, you know, just in their lives personally as well, because over a year, you're going to be going through stuff. And so the NLP actually helps you at any of those times as well. So it was just it was a well-structured program. It was very clear what we were doing at what specific points, and it was taxing at points. Of course, it has to be, right? It's a challenge. You're pushing yourself out of the comfort zone. But there was plenty of fun, great trainer, great support, great guests. And I thought it was just excellent, really excellent. And so anyone that's interested, I would encourage you to come to the information evening and find out, because there is an option for you to do Master Practitioner. There's also an option for you to do Trainer's Training. You don't have to do them both, but there's a great offer if you would like to do them both. So at the very least, you could do 6 months training, and you could gain your Master Practitioner. And I'm sure that if you change your mind at that point, Steve would let you do something. So, you could continue the journey. But go along and find out. Steve, do you want to tell us or them a little bit about the information evening, who it's for, and what will happen, and of course, when it is, with being happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the information evening is to give you a detail about what we'll be doing across the year and how the course is structured, because it's drip fed so that pretty much everybody can fit it into their diaries. We will be giving an overview of what you can expect. And as you said, Teresa, you can either do Master Practitioner or Trainer's Training or both. If you're already a Master Practitioner, I would highly recommend you do that, because Trainer's Training comes with Master Practitioner. So I would highly recommend you do that. If you've learned Master Practitioner somewhere else, it will be different with us. So I would highly recommend that. So we'll be just spending an hour and a half or thereabouts, just going over the program, answering all your questions, but also giving a flavor of what the journey is about. It's so much more than just an NLP course. It
really is.
More than that. It really is personal and professional development.
And also not just that, Steve, but like the opportunities as well, like the benefits of doing this. And of course, what your career path can then turn into as a trainer. So, there's a real growth piece in here in terms of business and revenue, and, how that can happen and how that will be addressed on the program as well. And so there's a lot to find out on the information course, and this live, of course, as we said, we'll do about 20 minutes, but it's 3 o'clock. But there's so much, and that's just, we haven't even touched the sides. So the information evening will give you a lot more detailed look at the content, how it flows, how it's going to be, and you can obviously ask Steve questions one-to-one and be in that sort of more private space, which would be great. So that'll be on a private Zoom, yeah?
The other thing I'd just like to mention as well is not to forget that Trainer's Training opens up a whole new income stream for you. And that's so important. I added 6 figures to my business purely from NLP related trainings as a result of that. And I say that only because it's important for professional coaches to be able to have a sustainable business. And I would say to anyone who does their Trainer's Training that it's important for you to get your investment back as quickly as possible. It opens up a huge opportunity. And I don't think it would be wise to mention this without saying that actually this is not just about getting certifications and stuff. It's the opportunity that it brings to your business too. Just the date, T, I'm just looking at the date just to double check.
So the 4th, did we?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
October the 4th?
Oh, October the 4th, yeah. Wednesday, no. I'm on September.
Wednesday? It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, October the 4th. Yeah.
7 o'clock. Yeah, brilliant.
7 o'clock for 7 to 8 or 8:30. We'll finish by then.
Have you got, I don't know how organised you're at this point, have you got a link to drop in for people to sign up for that evening, or what would you like them to do? Do you want them to put their name beneath the live and then we can get the form to them? Yeah,
if they could do that, if you just drop, I was just going to say, drop a yes. In the comment box, and then what we'll do is we'll get a form sent across to you. But we can also get a form out to other people who will watch this, because a lot of people will watch the recorded version of this.
Yeah,
So
and if you've got to the end, then you know what it's all about. But I will also post as well a little bit about the evening and the sign-up form. So hope to see you there, really. It'd definitely be a wise move if you're an NLP practitioner already and you're looking to advance that and you've been thinking about it for a while. Here's your chance.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All right, Steve. Well, thank you so much for your time and going on that sort of like little mini revision course for me as well, but also just to unpack the power of this and position it. And I'm sure that some people in the community will join you and me on the evening. So
Great.
I think that's about it, really.
And also, I'll drop the link to the TEDx as well. So please do watch the TEDx that's just gone live as well. I'll drop a link to that in this chat as well.
No worries. Okay, thanks so much. And thanks everybody who has watched. And if you've watched on the replay and like, if you are interested in the evening, just put like yes info underneath and we'll get the link to you. Okay, great. Thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Cheers.